Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing. It is Tuesday, the 15th of October. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry. How's it going, Joshua?
Yeah, going well. Going well. Busy day yesterday, but going well. How are you?
Yeah,
Same as
not bad.
yesterday.
What's that?
Same as yesterday. We're still in the midst of the international break, aren't we?
Yeah, we are, but we're edging ever closer to Rangers returning to action. Of course, heading down to Rugby Park this coming Sunday. But like you say, Joshua, plenty to talk about. Great article on the Rangers Review website this morning. You've carried out a exclusive interview with Nils Koppen, and the first of a two-part interview on the website. Very interesting reading. The first, which you'll find it this morning, you can find a link below this video, folks. He talks about the player trading model in great detail, and it was some interesting takeaways from that. He talks about his decision to move to Rangers initially from PSV and why he did that. You sat down with him for quite some time, Joshua, and quite an interesting point of view from this guy. We've not really heard from him just yet. I know he sat down with Rangers TV over the weekend, but this is proper in-depth stuff from him that we really haven't heard from him yet.
Yeah, it's first of a two-part interview that hopefully gives people really the idea behind this, Derek. From our point of view, is it should give people more of an insight into what is changing. You know, it's easy to hear about Rangers changing the recruitment structure and little bits of information here and there, but I think it's hopefully will give people a little bit more insight into what is actually happening, what has actually changed in the recruitment department and in the scouting structure that's in place at Rangers tomorrow. Koppen goes a little bit more into depth about the most recent summer window, the ambitious plan that you kind of heard him reference a little bit on Rangers TV, what went right within that, what went wrong as well. And I think that's an important part within the interview. Listen, it's similar to Clement. This isn't someone who's been at the club for 4 or 5 years and has necessarily made the decisions to get Rangers into this situation, but mistakes will inevitably be made in football. It's about making fewer mistakes than successes, being honest enough about them. And I think what I think comes through in that interview, there's a transparency that, look, Rangers are in a situation, Derek, that we discuss every single day, and where for the last 3 years they've been trying to claw back to maybe where they were the year before, or maybe where they were a couple of years before. And something that I think we've spoke a lot about this summer, and I'm sure a lot of people in the comments, a lot of podcasts that cover Rangers, a lot of people that go to games or work on games like us, is that to get out of what is a long-term situation, you need a long-term plan. And Koppen speaks about that in the interview, speaks about the plan when he came in effectively being the Rangers need to win now. And that, of course, will always remain. That has to be the case. But you also need to think long term. You need to think about your squad structure. You need to think about your average age. You need to think about the wage bill, all these different factors. So in today's interview, it goes into a little bit of depth about what has actually changed in the recruitment process. You know, for example, we've heard and we've told in different stories how Rangers are looking to different markets. Koppen said explicitly that he doesn't believe normally in recruiting from the Championship, which is a type of I think there's a type of detail that's important to hear, because Rangers need a clear vision of, in his words, where they're going to pick their fights. Another quote he says is that we're not a Premier League club, so we shouldn't act like a Premier League club. And I think what he's trying to insinuate with that is with the resources Rangers have. And I think this is some of the lessons that he'll have learned as one of the senior scouts at PSV, who effectively went on to assist their sporting director there in a lot of different matters, is that when you are where Rangers are in the football food chain, it's about trying to use that to your advantage, not trying to be hamstrung by really high wages that aren't going to benefit you long term, because that also doesn't help you as a player trading club, which is something that, you know, Rangers have had those sporadic wins, Derek, haven't they? They've sold Calvin Bassey for a lot of money. They sold Nathan Patterson for a lot of money. They sold Joe Rebo for a decent amount of money, but those wins have been somewhat limited by the fact that you've had over 10 players walk out the door for free over the past couple of seasons. So we also go into that, and I'm sure we'll discuss that this morning. How do you fix a player trading issue? And obviously it's about selling at the right time, and it speaks about that. It speaks about lessons from maybe after winning 55, when that was a time to reinvest, that was a time to refresh, to go and win again. Talks about the need to use Sam Lammers as an example of someone that clubs don't want to buy 28-year-olds, 27-year-olds, and clubs don't want to buy them on higher wages than they can afford to play. That's one of the many reasons why it's important that Rangers, as they have this summer, bring down their average age and bring down the average age of the squad and the average wage of the squad as well. So the first of a two-part interview, as you say, and especially tomorrow, I think there's some honesty about the summer window as well, which maybe people will find refreshing, because it's probably quite common in football, isn't it, for there to be no mistakes admitted by those higher up and only speaking about successes. But from my point of view, from doing the interview, from doing this two-part interview, there is a clear vision. There is a lot of changes outlined in the process, as we outline in the piece, and ultimately it's now up to Clement and Koppen and others and the players on the pitch to put this in action, because as the piece kind of comes back to at the end, Derek, the only way that Rangers become a successful player trading club, the only way that they can get these funds into then go and get the next young player, go and get the next talent when selling at the right time, as if they're a winning club, as if they're a club that is able to produce winners who are ultimately successful on the pitch. And that's only going to happen one way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. A snippet on that player trading model. He said that there are multiple layers. It's firstly about lowering the age, because if you look at clubs that are willing to buy, they're not going to buy a 28-year-old. They're going to buy a 19, 21 or 23-year-old. It's about bringing the age and salary down. Take Sam Lammers. If he'd been younger and on a lower wage, we would have been able to get a higher transfer fee. That's just logic. Bringing salaries down and the average age down, both of these things will allow you to sell more easily. This summer, it was impossible with how the squad was built, the profiles and salary profiles to get decent transfer fees in. It's also about selling in the right moments. If we have a player like Jefty who is doing well and the right offer comes in, we should sell him and be brave enough to say that we can find the next one. So I get what he's saying there in the plan. And like you say, Joshua, he talks about 55. He said, I think when the club won the league, the thinking was we're going to keep everybody and keep winning, but winning 55 of all the players in the best moments of their careers is the time of transition and reinvest in order to win again, even though keeping that side together should have returned more success. That's one of the key things I want to change. And he goes on, he mentions John Souttar as well in that. He says, of course, you need some of these guys like John Souttar to stay for a long time at the club. Guys who understand the DNA of the football club and can pass that knowledge on to new players. That's super important. But then he says that, but 80% of these players who move to the club should come with the ambition to go. Ultimately, that is only achieved by winning and progressing so that everyone can benefit the club and the players. Thought that was interesting, Joshua. But the DNA, John Souttar, he names checks there. But having guys that for want of a better phrase, want to use Rangers as a bit of a stepping stone.
Yeah, I think it's about the only way that ever works, Derek, is if players are good, right? And
Yes.
and as you know, as I know, as a lot of people in the comments know, if someone Rangers are to sign, let's say hypothetically, a young player like Jefty. Jefty's 20 years old. Let's say he's to play at Rangers for 2-3 years and be successful and then make them a lot of money. That works for everyone, and that is the only way that Rangers can become successful. It has to happen. There's no point in denying the wages that a player can get just down the road in the Premier League. Now, that's not to say that Rangers isn't an attractive destination. It's not to say that is not really put to new signings when they come to the club. The opportunity that comes with playing for Rangers, and that's something that's a point that's made a lot to new signings, that this is where you can make moments with your family. This is where you can kind of make the best moments of your career, so to speak. But it has to be grounded in reality as well. If you go back to Koppen's kind of backstory and why he was hired for this role, again, he's pretty honest in that he there's a quote somewhere in the piece, and it's too long for me to find it off the kind of tip of my fingertips, but he effectively says he was surprised at a lot of the aspects of the state that the club was in when he was hired. He admits that, it was difficult from the fact that the two people that hired him, James Bisgrove and John Bennett, the two people who pioneered this new football board approach, who led a lot of change internally inside the building, neither of those people are still there. And the football board structure that was in place has lost a lot of individuals, and will lose Craig Robertson as well as head of football operations, and that's increased Koppen's role and responsibility. I saw a comment coming in a minute ago that was speaking about not just relying on data, and Koppen wanting to kind of keep in touch with the process himself. And that's a really interesting fact, because Rangers wanted to move away from the sporting director approach, and I think there's limitations with their structure at the moment because of the questions, as we discussed yesterday, Derek, of who's ultimately responsible ahead of the manager. And that is an area where you could say that Rangers football structure at the moment does not safeguard themselves enough long term. I would certainly say that. But the idea from a recruitment point of view individually is have someone at the top of that department who's empowered to make decisions, but as an expert in that area. And there's a quote that Koppen effectively says, look, I don't want to be out of touch because I think some sporting directors can miss effectively the most important part of his job, their job, he says, which is transfers. They're not in touch with the developments on the pitch. They don't know players so well, and they're taking recommendations. But for him, it's really important to still be involved in that process, and that again lines up to his role at PSV as a kind of senior international scout, but then also working with the sporting director, assisting them on a number of different matters. That's the blend that Rangers were kind of looking for this time last year when they did restructure the department. So again, around them, like Clement, there's been a lot of flux, there's been a lot of change. It's not the picture, I'm sure, from an executive and a football board level that he envisioned when he came to the club a year ago. But I think to that comment, that is an important point. That is what they're clearly trying to do in this situation, is have someone at the top of that department who can lead on player identification, who should be an expert in that field, who has experience again, and he references this in the interview of speaking about Bakayoko and Saibari, two players that Rangers supporters will know well from that 5-1 defeat last year in PSV. They were players who were in his region during one of his first jobs at PSV, when he was kind of a blend between getting players for the academy, but also young players into the first team, like Chefty, like Connor Barron. It's that age range that Rangers have wanted to attract, and Koppen has a backstory of doing that, and it's come from a club where they've done that as well. But interestingly, he says, look, a young player isn't 21, a 22-year-old. A young player is someone who's 17 or 18. Sometimes they just need to be thrown in, and I think the quote is they'll drown a little bit maybe in the first part, but that's part of the story, and that's how they become better as well. So that's a clear cultural difference that he wants to have some influence on changing as well.
Yeah, well, there's a point that came in from Kev. He says, did Nils talk about playing academy players more? Their lower wages can help to balance costs and allow for better wages to attract signings. I was going to bring that point up. He says, getting that mindset right is key. Maybe he'll drown a little bit while he tries to swim, and that will be the next step. Protecting our academy players for too long and keeping them in a safe environment. They're not going to be the players who manage regular minutes. That's a step we have to take. And he also went on, he said we have to be aggressive in the youth market to try to get the best young players in the country and keep investing in that, because the strong core of Scottish players should come from your own academy, and sporadically you buy somebody from other clubs, like with Connor Barron. So there you go. I think one of the big talking points we've discussed on shows is the lack of young players coming through the academy and really staking a claim and being consistent performers in the Rangers first team. So that is something that I guess he's keen to address, Joshua.
Yeah, and you need consistency again when you've had different heads of academies and different managers and styles. We've discussed this just last week with Chris's piece talking about Lowry and King, Derek. You need consistency to allow young players to make that step. But it must be part of the core of your squad, because, as you say, lowering the average age and the wages is important from numerous points of view. Just from a common sense perspective, if you have younger players, you're going to give, if you have a younger overall average squad, you're going to give yourself a little bit more time to sell players on. And if you look at a lot of the players who Rangers spent a lot of money on, and a lot of areas they spent a lot of wages on in the previous summer, that was difficult to make a profit on that long term. Even when someone like Lammers went back to the Eredivisie and performed really well, and people were saying, well, why can't we get a higher fee for someone, for a player like this? Koppen goes on in the interview to speak about why the makeup of the squad made getting money in so difficult, and then why it is important. He says we might have to sell one of the young players next season, but rather than that being, we need to keep everyone together to be successful, there should be an attitude of, well, if that's going to return a good fee, let's trust ourselves to reinvest it, and trust ourselves to reinvest it well. And you're right, Derek, that comes in conjunction with the academy structure working and the pathway to the first team working, which I think ultimately the B team and these games are only going to benefit players up to a point, and they're not going to morph them into players who can play for Rangers first team. It's either going to be thrown players in, which to a degree I think Ross McCausland has shown that he could do. Now, is he a first team player, the first pick in either position for Rangers? No, but over the course he's done, I think, relatively well over the course of of the last year. And then there's also the topic of the Scottish market, which he spoke about. This is another issue that I think has frustrated people watching on. And yes, Rangers are going to go to different markets, or are going to trust their instinct to go for different markets. It's not as if, I think we can sometimes have a bit of a romanticized view about football club scouting departments and what they actually are, and there's this blend that was discussed in the interview of trying to match up the data to do the big work, to then allow you to pick your fights and go specifically and specialize on certain players who you think the data has identified as a potential good fit for your club and your style and what you're trying to do. And you should be going to far-flung places around the world, markets that are untapped, in order to try and extract and find value like other clubs have done. But you also can't miss the best talent that's under your nose, and a signing like Connor Barron is a signing that makes sense, and that's something that Koppen says in an ideal world Rangers would like to try and do that annually, get one of the best young Scottish talents, or one of the best talents from a Scottish club in the Scottish Premiership, who does know the league, players like John Souttar who do understand the club DNA, who can stay for a long time and impart that onto other individuals who come into the club as well. But that academy pathway, again, as we discussed last week, it's a bigger issue than just recruitment. It's a bigger issue than just one person. But equally, because of the change in structure and idea and personnel at the top of different departments, none of that has helped players break into the first team consistently, which I think is one of the big reasons that you see the likes of Lowry and King now not playing games. And that's something that needs to be fixed across the board. And again, that comes back to the question of, overall, do Rangers have enough of a football structure there outside of recruitment? Overall, is there enough jurisdiction over the manager? Is that safeguarded long term? I still think there's work to be done in that area.
Yep, go and check it out, folks. The first part of the two-part interview, the link is on the description below this video. Part 2 tomorrow, he talks about what happened with the move for Abdallah Sima. He reviews it the summer window, and lots more in between, so do go and check it out. Let's move on to other bits and pieces news-wise concerning Rangers. This I wanted to bring up, Joshua, because King Bonko and some others say surely Cassie deserves a start after his superb performance last night. You'll have seen, if you're a social media user, the Rachel Cashin-Murjos 2 assists for the Netherlands under-21s last night in their 3-0 win over Sweden in their Euros qualifier. 2 great balls in from the left-hand side, no less, onto the first one was Emmanuel Emega who scored, and then Rav Vandenberg netted for Holland as well. But I've seen a lot of comments after that, and given that his fleeting performances in the Rangers jersey as well, Joshua, people want to see more of this boy, and I think I want to see more of this boy starting on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree, and I think he's looked good so far. We were speaking just before we came on air this morning about when I think it was a Malmo where he played at left back, and I remember the first 10 minutes of that game, he just looked incredibly nonchalant in a positive way on the ball. We had a piece, Derek, that went out, I don't even know what month it is now. I think it was at the start of October, end of September, when he had just arrived at the club. Maybe it was September, with his Dutch under-21 coach and one of his former managers as well. And they were speaking a little bit about why those formative years at Ajax were so important for him, because he's a player who's grown up basically used to having the ball and used to dictating the tempo and starting the game from the back. He's still only 22 years old. He was signed by Feyenoord a couple of years ago, and if you speak to people close to that situation, part of the reason Feyenoord wanted him was that Arne Slot at the time wanted a player who could play in a lot of different positions, someone who could cover at centre-back, cover at left-back, cover at right-back, and was a more natural fit. And I think this is an important point, Derek. Rangers have a lot of fullbacks who can play inside the pitch or can play different variations of an inverted fullback role. I don't think they have many natural inverted fullbacks, if who've grown up playing in that system, who make those movements naturally, and it comes as a second nature to them. I think Cassim-Weirjo is that player, which is why there was frustration in the last month. Similarly, alongside Dujon Sterling, why are these players not being fielded in for certain games, maybe like that Lyon match at home? So I'd like to see more of him. I agree with you. Obviously, there is that option to make the deal permanent next summer, but he looks like an interesting profile. He looks like someone who can give Rangers a bit more versatility, and he could play at centre-back as well, because he spent a season in the Eredivisie a couple of years ago playing there at Groningen that kind of earned him that move to Feyenoord as well. But the first cross in particular is a really, really good ball, and it's another, I think, example of a player that we haven't maybe seen that much of. But if you start to pitch the likes of Ridvan and Casemiro and Sterling into that squad, it makes it a bit stronger, and Rangers certainly need that going into what's a difficult month. And I think they need those options at fullback going into games like Kilmarnock away, going into games like Aberdeen away, Olympiacos away. We're not far away from Tottenham, coming to Ibrox as well. And yeah, I have a feeling that Casemiro could actually play quite a lot over the next couple of months.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I thought it was, 2 assists last night. He's impressing at international level. I think he did well in the previous match as well. I think he played it Thursday night. I think he played against Mexico, came off the bench, I'm sure. So, let's hope we can see more of him in a Rangers shirt. A number of other Rangers players will be hoping to play for their international teams this evening. I mean, Connor Barron called up to the Scotland senior squad, given that promotion from the under-21s. There was a newspaper report yesterday suggesting that he had a slight knock, which is why he was pulled out of the squad, but he has been promoted to Steve Clarke's senior setup. Whether he gets game time tonight remains to be seen, but he and John Suter in that squad. And there's some others that will be hoping to get game time. Yanis Hadji's with Romania, and Mohamed Diamande with Ivory Coast, of course. Last night, Barami and Cherny played for Albania and the Czech Republic, respectively, as well. But let's just hope that they come through those matches unscathed, and they can play a part at the weekend, apart from Hadji, of course, who is suspended. Another bit of news I've seen, Joshua, which I read yesterday. Jermaine Defoe has been speaking about Rangers this season. He says it's hard watching his former club, speaking to gambling.com. He said, if you speak to any Rangers fan or ex-players, and if we're being totally honest, it's been hard watching it. We won the league when I had the player-coach role, and then after I left, the boys came so close to winning the Europa League. I looked at it and thought they would kick on next season if they kept the core of good young players and experience, and possibly add a few more, but it's actually gone the other way. And it has been tough to watch because I try and watch every game. I go to Glasgow quite a bit and speak to some of the boys. I feel like it's obvious that something needs to change. The players need to try and find their form. The players need to find some sort of consistency. There are games up there that people expect them to win, and you can slip up if you don't approach with the right frame of mind. And that happened last season. You look at the points that Rangers dropped last season, and their games that you would expect them to win convincingly, to be honest. And he also spoke about his time at Rangers and one day hoping to return in a coaching capacity. He said, if I had the opportunity to come back to Rangers at some stage, it would be an easy decision because it is such an amazing club, and I do feel I've got a special relationship with the fans. I spent a lot of time with Stephen Gerrard and Michael Beale talking about coaching, especially in lockdown when we had that period without playing. I started my coaching badges with Rangers and then completed my A licence while I was at Tottenham. Since then, I've had loads of conversations with clubs. I actually had a conversation with Rangers last year and told them that I would love to come back in some sort of role at the football club. Even when you've played at the top level for 20 odd years, there's no guarantee you're going to be a good coach. You have to do the courses and learn as much as you can. I'm so glad that I did the academy stuff at Tottenham, learning a lot about stuff I didn't even know existed. You just learn so much. So I would advise players that want to go into coaching to do their badges while they're still playing, because you see the game completely differently. So that is what Jermaine Defoe had to say about Rangers. I'd get him up in a heartbeat to train the strikers, Joshua.
Tom Scott, I see his comment saying criticising the player trading model, so he's on time with his quotes. But I think the thing that stands out to me there is that's the pivot for Rangers. Obviously, it's just over a number of years, a handful of years since they got to the Europa League final, approaching the end of 2024 now, and the value in that squad then, or the end of 2021, is in a very different place just now. But it was under Van Bronckhorst that he eventually left, wasn't it? And again, I guess that's a little bit.
He had that coaching. Yeah, he got the coaching role. He wasn't really. I think Gio came in and just asked him, "What do you want to do? You want to be a coach or you want to play?" And
he went on to play for Sunderland again, didn't he? I think.
Yeah.
But I not to relate everything back to the points I'm trying to make this morning, Derek. But if I was to do that, then I would say that all these little things, think how many different members of the backroom staff Rangers have had over the last few years, how many people in all these different roles. Just a lack. What kind of comes through there is a lack of consistency that needs to change to breed success at Rangers. But listen, I think if you had your way, you'd probably still play Jermaine Defoe up front at the moment. So.
Well, when he talks about there, they came close to winning Europa League. Remember that when Rangers never had a striker and had to play Joe Rebo up front?
Yeah.
I'd love to have a Germaine Defoe to bring off the bench
Yeah.
in that final and other matches as well. I think you don't lose it. He might have lost a yard of pace, but what a class act he was. And if Germaine Defoe tells you how to strike a ball in front of goal, then it's you certainly listen. I think Alfredo Morelos certainly benefited from having him around during his time at the club.
It was was it Dundee away in the cup where he probably played a game Morelos he shouldn't, and he was in such a good vein of form then under Van Bronckhorst. And if memory serves me correctly, because Rangers' injury record had actually been pretty good the season before when they won the league, the likes, and that's epitomised by the fact that Kemar Roof played pretty regularly that season. I think he started something like 20 league games. But then after that, I'm pretty sure Van Bronckhorst went through a stage where he didn't make many subs. Got a memory of a game as well as a game. I think it was away at St Johnstone where Scott Arfield was playing on the right, and he played like every minute. This is when he was like 33, 34-year-old. He played every minute for maybe a month or two, and there wasn't enough rotation. And then Morelos got that injury just before international duty, didn't he? Or when he flew off to international duty as well. So sliding doors.
Yeah. So it'll be intriguing to see where he ends up. But interesting to know that he still watches Rangers games and he's up in Glasgow quite a fair bit. So wish him well with his future endeavours, whether that's at Rangers or beyond. Before we wrap up, I see there's a point that's been started here, Josh.
Yes.
You want to
I have a point from Steve Snedden, which I think is right, spot on. Speaking about Chefty being flung into the starting 11, no other options, done brilliantly. Cas van Veerjoen similarly needs installed on the other side. Let's try Rice in the middle, see how he gets on. The point that Steve's making here, I think, is spot on, and it comes back to the idea of what a young player is. And if you'd said at the start of the season, Derek, in pre-season, Chefty's going to play the first, what month are we in? 2-3 months of the season with no cover, people would have looked at a 20-year-old left back coming in who's, pretty offensively minded, attacking minded, although I don't think he's made many mistakes defensively. I'm sure he'll still need to improve in that area, but I don't think you can say there's been a huge number of red flags so far. People would have looked at that and thought, oh, you've got to protect them. And protect them from what? Because I think so often our approach to young players in Scotland is you want to protect them and wrap them in cotton wool, but I just think if you look all around football, PSV is a great example of this. They throw players in when they're good enough, and that is again such an area that they need to get right moving forward to fix their player trading model, to make their squad more attractive to buyers, ultimately to make Rangers successful, which is the key point at the end of the day. And if Rangers can be successful and they have players who bring them that success, it's going to work for both parties. It's going to work for the player and it's going to work for the club, as it did with someone like Calvin Bassey, who went on that kind of meteoric rise and is now an established Premier League centre-back. So, yes, I like Steve's point, so I wanted to bring that up before we close.
Yeah, good stuff. Excellent. Right, before we wrap up, first of all, Aldo, welcome back, Aldo. You've not seen you for a while. Says like, subscribe, and don't get wide. Absolutely, like and subscribe, folks, to the channel. That'd be greatly appreciated. And just a heads up, remember tomorrow I will be on the slightly earlier time of around about 9 a.m. Folks, I'll be on with Stevie. The reason for that is because I then need to catch a train down to London for our Rangers Review live show, which will take place with myself, Joshua, and Mark Hateley at the Volley in London tomorrow. You can see the little ticker below if you're watching us on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Tickets are still available. Use the code RR50 and get your tickets at half price. So tickets still available. Just click the link below this video if you fancy the Rangers Review live event tomorrow. But just a heads up, the show will be live at 9 a.m. tomorrow. So if you're tuning in at past, then we will be off air by then, because I need to go and catch out the train. But there you go. Right, that'll do us. A big thank you to Joshua as ever, and to you all for tuning in. It's very much appreciated. Those of you that are Rangers Review Extra members, Chris and Stevie's The Talking Point was released yesterday on Clement's Year in Charge, so go and check it out. I will record a Q&A show this afternoon at around about 2 o'clock as well, so I'll pop the post out on the community page. Get your questions in, folks, and we'll get through as many as we possibly can. If I don't speak to you then, enjoy your Tuesday, and we'll speak to you tomorrow. Bye for now.